I awoke one morning, as I often did, feeling a familiar weight pressing on my chest. It was not a tangible thing, but a sensation of being crushed under the endless demands and contradictions of life. My days had become a series of tasks that never seemed to end, and yet I could not name a single thing that truly satisfied me. There was a yearning, a longing that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, but I could not decipher its language. It was as though I were standing in the middle of a dense forest, unable to see the path that would lead me out. For a long time, I blamed the world around me for this feeling. I saw the people I interacted with as obstacles, their needs and desires as barriers that prevented me from finding peace. If only they would change, I thought, then everything would be easier. I began to resent them, to wish that they would conform to my way of thinking, to my vision of how things should be. But the more I struggled against them, the more tangled I became in my own web of frustration and despair. It was during this time that I found myself attending a gathering, not because I sought answers, but because I was desperate to escape the noise in my head. The speaker began by saying something simple. "Good morning. We are extremely pleased that you are here. It is good to come together for the purpose of co-creating. Do you agree?" There was a murmur of agreement from the audience, and I found myself nodding, though I wasn't entirely sure what I was agreeing to. The speaker continued, "You are all creators whether you realize it or not. Every thought, every emotion, every action you take is a form of creation. And yet, many of you struggle because you believe that creation is something you must force, something you must control. But true creation is not about control, it is about allowing." These words struck a chord within me, though I did not yet understand why. I had always seen life as a battle, a constant struggle to bend the world to my will. But here was someone suggesting that there was another way, a way that did not involve resistance. I listened, curious, as the speaker explained that contrast, the things we don't like, the conflicts, the challenges, was not something to be feared or fought against. Instead, it was an essential part of the creative process, a way for us to focus and define what we truly wanted. "You are here," they said, "not to eliminate contrast, but to use it. Each time you encounter something that displeases you, you are given the opportunity to refine your desires, to become clearer about what you truly want. And as you become clearer, the universe responds, bringing to you the people, situations, and opportunities that match your vibration." I had heard the term vibration before, but it had always seemed abstract, something reserved for spiritual gurus and mystics. Yet as I listened, I began to see it in a new light. It was not a mystical force, but a simple truth. The energy we put out into the world determines what we attract. If I was constantly focusing on what was wrong, on what I didn't want, then I was essentially inviting more of that into my life. It was a self-perpetuating cycle of negativity. The realization hit me like a sudden burst of light. I had been trying to control everything around me because I believed that was the only way to find peace. But in doing so, I had become trapped in a loop of resistance. I was constantly fighting against the current, and it was exhausting. What if, instead of trying to change everything around me, I changed the way I felt about it? What if I stopped focusing on the conditions and started focusing on how I wanted to feel? This question lingered in my mind, and over the following days, I decided to experiment with it. Each morning, I would take a few moments to sit quietly, close my eyes, and imagine myself in a place that brought me joy. Sometimes it was a beach, with the sound of waves gently crashing against the shore. Other times it was a forest, with sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. I would breathe in the peace of these places, allowing myself to feel as though I were truly there, and I would carry that feeling with me throughout the day. At first, it felt strange, almost superficial. I was so used to focusing on what was wrong that deliberately seeking out joy felt unnatural. But I persisted, and slowly, I began to notice a shift. The things that once irritated me no longer seemed so important. The people who once felt like obstacles became fellow travelers, each on their own journey, and I found myself more willing to offer them compassion instead of judgment. One morning, as I was walking to work, I passed a flower that had somehow managed to grow through a crack in the pavement. It was small and delicate, its petals a vivid shade of blue, and it seemed to glow in the morning sunlight. I stopped and stared at it, marveling at how something so fragile could find a way to thrive in such an inhospitable environment. It was then that I realized the true meaning of what I had heard at the gathering. The flower was not trying to change the pavement, to push it away or destroy it. It simply grew, reaching for the light, finding its own way to bloom despite the conditions around it. I had spent so much of my life trying to change the conditions, thinking that if I could just make everything perfect, then I would be happy. But happiness was not something that could be achieved by manipulating the world around me. It was something that had to be cultivated from within. The conditions would always change, but my ability to choose how I responded to them was mine alone. With this new perspective, I began to see contrast not as a barrier, but as a gift. Each challenge, each moment of discomfort was an opportunity for me to clarify my desires and to align myself more closely with the things that brought me joy. I stopped trying to control others, to make them see things my way, and instead focused on the feelings I wanted to cultivate within myself. And as I did, something remarkable happened. The world around me began to change. It wasn't that the challenges disappeared. They were still there, as they always had been. But I no longer saw them as threats. Instead, they were like the waves of the ocean, constantly shifting and flowing, but always carrying me forward. I learned to ride them, to find joy in the movement, rather than fearing the inevitable crash. I thought back to the speaker's words. You have absolute control over the vibration that you are emitting, and therefore you have absolute control over your point of attraction. It was not about forcing the world to be a certain way. It was about choosing to emit a vibration of peace, of joy, of love, regardless of the conditions. It was about learning to be like that flower, finding my way to bloom even in the cracks. As I continued to practice this, I found that the people around me began to respond differently as well. Those who had once seemed difficult or antagonistic began to soften, as if they could sense the change within me. I realized then that I was not just creating my own experience, I was influencing theirs as well. By choosing to emit a vibration of love, I was inviting them to do the same, without ever saying a word. This journey is not one that has an end. There are still days when I struggle, when the old habits of resistance and control try to reassert themselves. But I have learned to be gentle with myself, to remind myself that this is all part of the process. Each moment of contrast, each challenge, is a chance to grow, to refine, and to align more deeply with who I truly am. I no longer wake up with that weight on my chest, because I know now that I have the power to choose how I feel. I know that I am not a victim of the world around me, but a creator, capable of shaping my reality through the energy I choose to emit. And that realization has brought me a sense of peace and freedom that I never thought possible. As I write this, I can't help but smile, thinking of that small blue flower growing through the pavement. It is a reminder that no matter how hard or unyielding the world may seem, there is always a way to find the light, to grow, and to bloom. We are all creators, and the universe is our canvas. The conditions may not always be perfect, but they do not need to be. All that matters is that we continue to reach for the light, to find joy in the journey, and to trust that everything we desire is already on its way to us. And so, the journey continues, not as a struggle against the world, but as a dance with the universe. Every challenge, every moment of contrast, is an opportunity to define who we truly are and to align more deeply with our joy. The peace we seek is not found in changing everything around us, but in changing the way we see and feel within. When we learn to trust this process, to embrace the contrast, we open ourselves to a life of endless possibilities. We are no longer bound by the limitations of our past, but are free to create a new, vibrant future that resonates with our true desires. Remember, you have the power to choose how you experience your world. Each day is a blank canvas, ready for you to paint with the colors of your choosing. By focusing on the light within, by aligning with the source energy that flows through you, you can transform any situation into an opportunity for growth and expansion. Let your journey be guided by love, by joy, and by the inner peace that is always within your reach. No matter where you are right now, Know that you are on the path, and everything you desire is already making its way to you.